A sunny, misty morning, the scent of spring in the air. A day like today makes me feel so grateful where we're at now. The years struggling through the chaos, fleeing to America, the long trek on foot from the East Coast to here. Now we have some sense of stability and security. Father wants me to take over his store up on 93rd, but that's not me. I see all the stuff that Mac and his crowd have done for the neighborhood, and I want to be part of that. That's why I'm meeting with him this morning. Take our house for instance. Most of the homes here were worn out or falling down. Then add in people like us, pouring in from everywhere, and things got a bit crowded and crazy sometimes. So Mac's group designed a core housing system, something quick and decent, basically a kitchen, a bath, and 2 rooms. We started out with 1 unit, then we added 2 more, all laid out around a common area. Mac was one of those people who saw how this century would unfold. Climate change, running out of resources, they would cause the global systems to fall apart, sowing disruption and upheaval. Mac believed that cities would have to find their own way, becoming self-sufficient. So he and his friends tried to design for this. Those were god-awful days back when I first came here, he once told me. Industries that had left behind wastelands. Constant gun battles. So much so you didn't know if you would make it home that night alive. Half-empty streets, people trying to keep up their houses. He said all they had then was dreams and guts to work with. Take this path we're on, he said. Mac explained that with all the empty lots, folks started cutting through. Why be bound by a grid, he asked. So they paved these paths, and houses started springing up along them. Some families created their own compounds. There were a few stores, and once in a while, a creative addition. He noted the street we were on, Marshall Avenue. It had been curved to catch the runoff. Filtered through bioswales, the water ran into streams that fed ponds that in turn provided for urban farms. Mac next talked how many of the empty lots ended up creating forest and fields. Yes, they were a bit of a jungle, but they were a starting point. From there, the tree cover was extended, even using it to stitch the 2 sides of East 93rd back together. It's more than a bunch of trees, Sam, he said. When I asked what he meant, he talked of 2 designers that had influenced him as a young man. One, Lawrence Halprin, had studied the landforms through which water flowed. With this, he developed the idea of a progression of open spaces. This he used as he designed a series of parks and fountains in Portland. Max spoke how, as he walked through those lush and green areas years ago, he was met constantly with one little surprise after another, of feeling so aware and alive. Next, Max spoke of going to Tokyo for a conference. One of his hosts had taken him to a complex known as Hillside Terrace. He was astounded how the architect, Fumiko Maikai, had broken up the buildings with landscape, creating a sense of open and fluid spaces. Here one could move unhindered and unhurried. Here both public and private could exist together. I wanted to bring all of this here, to these streets, said Mac. The thing is we can't live in parks all day. When Mac said these words, it began to come together for me, that he was seeking not a collection of components, but some sort of unity. Like the buildings we were passing, where the boundary between landscape and building had started to dissolve. He pointed to the corner of 93rd and Easton, the greenhouses on its roof, the corner flat that was one large planting wall. They allowed the landscape to be carried through and into the building, while continuing the tree cover. It was when Mac took me to the 2nd floor of that building at Easton that I saw how much further his crowd had tried to push things. We entered a small atrium surrounded by apartments of varying styles. They had taken an idea from the barrios and favelas of Latin America where people had been building their houses for years. He explained first that a large, enclosed, and unfinished space was built, a tent he called it. People could then move in and create their own dwellings. His crew was around to help, but he said it was their job to facilitate, not to impose. Mac then pointed across the street to another structure. There, he explained, they started with just floors and a core, bare bones, he said it. Then, taking a cue from nature, in this case a mesa with crevices and outcroppings, the facades were shaped both to allow for landscaping and to activate the street. As Mac put it, flat buildings create flat people. As folks started moving in, making their own spaces, the staff worked with them to help create facades that had some sense of coherency. That way everyone's space was respected without having a visual mess. By now it was time to go. Mac asked me that before we met again to take more strolls through the neighborhood. He said I needed to know the city, with my body and my mind. He wanted me to notice that nothing's fixed, all constant change and flow. The city happens regardless of our concepts, or the frameworks we placed on it, so don't be bound by any boundaries, he said. Finally, the designs here were spurred by equity and worked out through ecology. If I understood all this, Mac said, then I would know the difference between this century and the last. I had a lot of ground to cover.